My name is Kelly Dale with Off the Beaded Path. Thanks so much for joining me today as we work on a brand new project. I couldn't let the month of October go by without acknowledging that this month is Breast Cancer Awareness Month. Now, I have remade this video probably 12 times trying to say the right thing and not cry or anything like that, so I'm just going to say this. Today's video is dedicated to a wonderful lady who has been in my life for about the last 10 years. Her name is Gloria Crenshaw. Gloria lived in Texas, and Gloria had breast cancer, and she passed away earlier this summer. Gloria was one of my customers, and even though I never met Gloria face to face, I had many conversations with Gloria about our lives, our spirituality, our families, and one of the things that meant the world to her was her family. And when I was looking for pictures to put on the actual pattern that I wrote for this project, I found this picture. This is of Gloria and her daughter, and this was one of my favorite pictures that I've seen because it reminds me of how full of life Gloria used to be and what an awesome person she was. So in honor of Gloria, today's project is a awareness ribbon that is made out of seed beads, but it's using CRAW, cubic right angle weave. Now, I know some of you, I just heard your groans all the way here in Forest City, North Carolina, but this is a stitch that works beautifully for this project, and it uses minimal amount of beads. So for the ribbon itself, you can use pretty much any size bead. I've used a size 11 seed bead and a size 15 seed bead. What you want to do is you want to make sure that both of those seed beads are the same brand. So they're both Miyuki or both Toho or both Preciosa or whatever you choose to use. Now, the ribbon that I'm going to show you to make today, made in the 11s and 15s, is going to be about 1.5 inches. It's not a huge ribbon. So if you want a larger ribbon, you may want to use a size 8 seed bead and a size 11 seed bead, or a size 6 seed bead and a size 8 seed bead. So whatever size you want to use, know that you have to go one size larger and one size smaller for what you're going to do. Now, for the sample today, I'm going to be actually using size 6 seed beads and size 8 seed beads just because it's going to be easier for you to see on the screen. Now, another thing that you need to know, and I don't know if it's because every time I looked at this crazy pattern and saw Gloria's picture, I became like a blubbering fool, but I had the hardest time writing a pattern for this project. Number one, because it's basic cubic right angle weave. So there's not a whole lot that I can explain on CRAW that hasn't already been explained by fabulous other people who are way smarter than I am. But what I have come up with is a couple of great diagrams that you'll be able to follow. And I think between the video instruction and these diagrams, you are going to be successful at this project. So I'm going to go slow today. I'm going to go very thorough, step by step. So hopefully you guys will be successful at this project. Now, the ribbon itself, once it's made, can be made into earrings. It can be made into a pin like you would wear. It can be made into like a keychain fob, kind of whatever you want it to be, okay? It's just a ribbon, so it's up to you. The other thing that you're going to need for the project is a needle. So with an 11 and a 15, I would use a size 12 needle. If you're using bigger beads, you can bump up to a size 10 needle. But the biggest thing you're going to need is your fire line. This project needs to have stiffness. And without the stiffness, you're not going to get that nice curve at the top that you want. And your two ribbons that come down like this are not going to be stiff. So you need that stiffness. Now, I will tell you, I was sent a sample of the dragon thread. And so I tried out the dragon thread for the project. As far as the thread goes, I really like the thread. It worked really nicely, but it did not keep its shape when I did one ribbon with Fireline and one with the dragon thread. So I think the dragon thread is definitely going to have its place, and I'm going to play more with it, but it just didn't hold its shape good when you want something that's really going to hold its shape. So definitely make sure to use your Fireline. If you're using the smaller beads, a 6-pound Fireline will work. If you're using some bigger beads like I'm using today, I'm probably going to bump up to an 8 or a 10-pound Fireline just so that it all holds together really well. And that's it. Just your seed beads, your needle, and your Fireline. So let's go ahead and get started. Before I get started today, I did want to let you know that the board I'm using today is the Ultimate Bead Board by the Bead Wrangler. And you can find the Bead Wrangler at etsy.com/shop/Bead Wrangler boards. I love this board. It is what she calls the ultimate board again, and it's a good, nice, large board. Now, this is the ribbon we're going to make today. This is the one I made with Fireline, and this is the one I made with the dragon thread. So you can even see a little bit of difference there in the shape of the piece itself. So I'm going to go ahead and hit you with some measurements so you'll have an idea of the size of your piece here. So that's inches and centimeters, and inches, centimeters. And you'll notice that, like I said earlier, it's only about 1.5 inches, so it's not a large piece. So just like I said in the intro video, this one is made using the 11s and the 15s. If you wanted it larger, you could use an 8/0 and an 11/0. Or if you wanted it even bigger, you could use a 6/0 and an 8/0. So you can definitely do some different sizes with your piece. Now, to be able to make this little guy, if you do not have CRAW, we need to make a base for CRAW. And I have these 40mm wooden beads here that I'm going to be showing you the foundation of CRAW so that you will have a little bit of an easier time with it. So every box that we are going to make consists of 4 total beads. We have to think of it like we're building a house. We have a floor, we have 4 walls, and then we're going to have a little roof, okay? So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take my thread and I'm going to thread on 4 beads. Now, you, with your smaller thread, are going to take and go through all 4 of the beads again. Me, I'm going to go just back through this first bead because I don't want to plug up too much of my hole for the demo. So you would go through all 4 beads and then this first one again so that you have a little circle here of 4 beads. Your tail thread would be coming out of one side, your working thread will be coming out of another side, just like I've got here. Now, on our floor, we will build 4 walls. So each bead is going to have a wall. Again, each little box we make consists of 4 beads. So this is the first bead of the first wall. So that tells me I need to thread on 3 beads to have a wall. So I'm going to thread on 3. So 1, 2, and 3. And my purpose is to make a circle. So no matter if I'm coming out to the left or I'm coming out to the right, I need my thread to make a circle. So if I turn it around this way and I kind of hold my thread, I'll look and see that I need to come this way to make that circle. So I'm going to come back through the same bead that my thread is coming out of to make a circle. And I'm going to pull this through. So now, even though this is laying flat right this second, this is still my floor and my first wall here with those 3 beads. Now to make the next wall, we need to get into position. So to get into position, I'm going to come through the next floor bead, which is this bead here. So I'm going to take my needle and I'm going to come through the floor bead. If I try to build the wall without coming through the floor bead, it's not going to look right and it's going to be messed up. So we have to go through that bead. Now, like I said, each wall that we build is going to be shared with another wall. So I have my floor bead here. This is bead 1 of my wall. And then if I hold this up like this, I have the second bead to my wall because they're going to, again, go in a circle just like this one is. So this tells me if I have 2 beads, I'm going to pick up 2 more beads. So 1 and 2. Now, your beadwork at this point is probably still laying completely flat like mine is. And that's good because if it's sticking up like this, sometimes you have a little bit of hard time seeing which beads to go through. So we need to, again, to make that circle. So if I make a circle, if it's sitting up like this, I'm going to come back around and I'm going to go through this bead, this side bead, and a floor bead. If it's laid down flat like this, you can take your needle and pretty much go straight through both of those beads. Now, if I was using a smaller bead and needle, I would be able to take my needle and go through both of those beads at the same time. But because I've got these big beads and big needle, I'm going to have to go through them one at a time here. So just bear with me. Okay. So once I pull this tight, you'll see now that I still have floor beads here, but now I have 2 walls. 1 wall, 2 walls. Now I need a 3rd wall. So I'm coming out, and I'm going to leave it flat so you can kind of see here. I'm coming out of this floor bead. So to make my next wall, I need to come through the next floor, which is this bead right here. Ugh, I have to grab my pliers here to pull that through. There we go. Okay, so 2 walls up, I'm coming out of this bead. Again, every circle is going to comprise of 4 beads. I have 1 bead and 2 beads, so this tells me that I need to pick up 2 beads. I'm going to try to do this one-handed so I don't have to let go. There we go. Well, that's just not going to work. Okay. So my thread is coming out of this bead. Again, we need to make a circle. So if it's kind of laid out flat like this, I'm going to come through this bead and this bead. If it's nice and straight up like this, we have to come down through this bead and then through this bead. We're making circles. Use my needle to pull through here. And thank goodness for these little bead-along big eye, large eye needles here. They are helping out greatly with the project here today. Oh, goodness. Okay. So when I pull this tight, now I have 3 walls, 1, 2, 3, and you'll see down here on the bottom, if I lay it out flat, I still have 1 floor bead, but the issue now is, remember, I told you each wall consisted of 4 beads. Well, if you look, I already have 1, 2, 3 beads in place, okay? Again, 1 bead, 2 beads, and 3 beads. So that means I only actually need to pick up 1 bead to make the wall. Now, my thread is coming out of this floor bead here. So normally, to get into position, if you remember, I have to go through the next floor bead, which is going to be my last floor bead here. So I'm going to pull this through. Now, to get into position to add the one single bead, and instead of coming through just my floor bead, I also have to go through the side bead here of this first wall. Because you can see I have these 3 beads here on top, and all I need is one more. Okay, so now I'm going to pick up one bead, and if I hold it in place, so you can see there my roof now, I'm going to take this thread, this one bead that I've got here, I'm coming out of this bead on the wall, and I'm going to come just directly across, and I'm going to come down through this bead, which is the other bead of the wall, if I can get it through there. Here we go. So that once I pull it, and it's nice and tight, now I have a 3-dimensional cube. And that's exactly what we need. I have 4 on the bottom and 4 on each side. And that's what we want. Now, to get into position to do our next piece, we need to be coming out here on the top. So to do that, I'm going to go through the bead here on the bottom, my floor bead. I'm going to come up through the side bead of this same wall that I'm working with. And then, here's what you need to pay attention to. And here's where everybody kind of gets messed up. You always need to work in the same direction as a beginner or even an intermediate. You always kind of want to work in the same direction, because if you turn around, it's going to get you confused. For me personally, I always go to the bead here to the left, which is going to be this bead here from where I'm coming out, to start my next box. All right. Some of you will go to the bead to the right, and that is fine. Either way, you always want to try to stay in the same position to kind of go around each box that you make. Now, if you're using the size 6 seed beads in this position, which I'm going to use, you may want to go through these beads here on top one more time before you actually start the project. This will keep all 4 of these beads in place as you work. So that way you don't have to worry about them getting loosey-goosey and getting yourself confused as to where you're at. Because even though this is the ceiling or the roof of our box, this now becomes the floor of our new box that we're building. Okay? So I have to act like these aren't even here, and I have my 4 beads, and I'm going to start building walls off these 4 beads just like it was my base. So now I hope you can see how this cube kind of comes into place to start. And this is what we are going to, I'm actually going to show you with the seed beads as well. And I'm going to show you how to do this on the CRAW tool that I sell on my website. For those of you who have a really hard time with this, the CRAW tool comes out wonderfully as a helper for this. So let me go ahead and get some beads poured out, get my mat cleaned off, and we will get started. So let's go over our diagram here of our project first. The pink that you see is the 11O. So I'm going to write that on here. So the pink equals 11O. The yellow on the diagram equals our 15O seed bead. We will start on one side and work our way up, and then we will be doing our curve. And then as we come down, we're going to have to do a connection circle and then come down the rest of the way. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to count the boxes that I need to do to get up here to where you see these yellow beads. So if I actually box it out like this, I have 1 box, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, and finally 14. So I have 14 boxes. So if I start here and work around, I have 14 CRAW boxes with my 11 O's. All right, so that's what we are going to start with here on our diagram. So again, I'm going to use a size 6 and a size 10 needle. And my thread, now I'm using a thread just so that you'll be able to see it, but I'm going to use the 8-pound in the Wildfire here in the green color. Again, just so you'll be able to see it. To start, we're going to build that floor. Just like I showed you on our big bubble here, we have 4 beads on the floor that we have to start with. So I pick up 4 beads. I'm going to bring them all the way down. And I'm going to kind of take my finger and just kind of wrap that thread around so I don't lose it. And I'm going to go back through all 4 of those beads again. So from my little tail back, I'm going to go through all 4 and pull this through. Now, I have so many people who say that does not make a circle. Well, it doesn't, because you're pulling opposite ways. So what you need to do is get both of them together like this and pull them, and that will give you a nice look. So now I'm going to take my needle. My tail thread is coming out here of this bead here. So I'm going to take my needle now that I've gone through all 3 of them, or 4 of them again, and I'm going to go through 1 more bead, which is that first bead that I started with. So now, just like on the big beads, you'll see that my tail thread is coming out of one side of the bead and my working thread is coming out of the other side of the bead. Now remember, and this will help you very, very much, our mantra is 3, 2, 2, and 1. So if you are new to CRAW, go ahead and lay out your beads. 3, 2, 2, 1. And this will help you tremendously. So for the first wall, I'm going to pick up my 3 beads. Remember, my thread, wherever it's coming out, I have to go around to make a circle. So my thread is coming out here. So I'm going to come right back around and go through that bead so that it makes a circle. So when I do that, now I have floor beads and 1 wall made. Remember, to get into position to make our next wall, I have to go through the next floor bead. So I have to go through this bead right here so that it will make the floor. Or the wall, get in position, I should say, for the wall. So I have 1 wall and a floor, so I have 2 beads in place. So that lets me know I have to pick up 2 beads because I've laid out my pattern. My thread is coming out here. I have to make a circle, so I'm going to go around to make that circle. So I'm going to go through a side bead and a floor bead. So 1 and 2. So that when I pull, and I kind of pull it tight, this is what my piece will look like. So again, you can see my 4 I hold it back like this, you can see my 4 floor beads, and now I have 2 walls, 1 and 2. So I'm going to take the needle to get into position to make the next wall, and I'm going to come through the next floor bead here on that base. I know I already have 2 beads, 1, 2, these 2 beads in place, and also I only know that I need to pick up 2 because it's here for my pattern. I've got it laid out. So I'm going to come back around to make the circle. So I'm going to go through the wall bead and the floor bead, or a side bead and a bottom bead, however you want to tell yourself when you do the project. So now, if I look from the top, I have 3 beads that are laying down. That lets me know that all really I need is 1 more bead. So if I hold it to the side here, you'll be able to see this is my wall bead, a floor bead, and a wall bead. So I already have 3 beads in position. Like we said, every box has 4 beads, so I only need this 1. So normally to get into position, I would come through this 1 floor bead here. But if I try to add the 1 bead right now, it's going to stick out and it's not going to look good. So I have to go up through the side bead and then pick up the 1 bead left on the wall. My thread is coming out of the side bead here on the left. I'm going to take my needle and I'm going to go down through the side bead on the right and pull this out. Now, if you've never done CRAW before, using a bigger bead like these size 6 seed beads helps tremendously. Remember, just like in my big cube that I showed you just a minute ago, we need to be coming out on the top. So to do that, I need to go through my floor bead, through the side bead, which is just the bead right above it, and then again, remember what I said when I showed you those big beads. You always want to work in the same position. I like to work in a clockwise position, so I'm always going to go through this bead here to the left once it comes out of that little side bead. Again, so because I'm working with bigger beads, I'm going to go through these beads here on the top 1 more time so that it holds them all together as I work. If you're using smaller beads, then you don't have to worry about it. But I do this, and if you are a beginner or someone who's just learning and you want to use the 11s, it would behoove you to do this step just so that it'll make it a little bit easier for you on what to do. So now you see the big version versus the baby version is what we'll call it. It comes out all the same. So now my 4 beads here that I'm looking down on, those are my 4 floor beads now. So I'm going to switch it just so that it's in the same position so that I started with earlier so you can see. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take my count and I'm going to lay out 3, 2, 2, and 1. And again, if you're a beginner, this comes in really handy. If you're intermediate or advanced, you know you don't have to worry about this. My first wall consists of 3 beads. So I pick up those 3 beads and I'm going to come back around to make a circle. So floor and wall. To get into position, we need to come through the next floor bead, which is this bead here. And we pick up 2 beads because remember, we already have 2 in place. So I pick up my 2 and I'm going to come back around to make the circle. So I go through this bead and this bead. Now for my friends who are left-handed, don't worry, I'm going to show the left-handed way on the CRAW tool. So do not worry since I'm working in a position that's kind of opposite what you normally work with. So now I need to make another wall. So I'm going to come through the next floor bead. I'm going to pick up 2 beads because remember, I already have 2 in place here. And I'm going to take the needle and come back through those 2 beads again. So I'm going to go through 1 and 2. So again, if I look down on top, I see my 1, 2, 3 beads. So I know there's only 1 more here. And again, I know there's only 1 because I've only got 1 bead left. So to do the last wall, I already have a side bead, a floor bead, and a side bead. So I go through the next floor bead to get myself into position. But remember, because I'm not adding 3 or 2 beads, I'm only adding the 1, I have to kind of do a little step up and go through this side bead before I can add that single bead. So I pick that bead up and I'm going to come around to make the circle. So I'm going to go through the side bead from the previous wall and then the floor bead. So if you can do both of this at once, it can kind of help you, save you a stitch or 2. But you can go through the side bead and the floor bead. This finishes out my box. Now remember, I've got to come out up here. So I'm going to take the needle and I'm going to come through the side bead right above where my thread's coming out. And to continue working in the same direction, I would come through this bead here on the left. Now, for my left-handed friends, I'm going to show you guys really quick. Normally, what you like to do on this, well, I shouldn't say normally because I hate to put everybody in a box, but a lot of left-handers go counterclockwise. So I'm going to do that on this row really quick so I can show you that. It works exactly the same way. I'm going to go through the 4 beads again here on the top just to hold them in place. All right, so my thread is coming out here. If I lay my beads out, 3, 2, 2, 1, I'm ready to go. So the first wall is 3. I come back around to make that circle. So just swoop it right through, just like this. So I have floor and wall. So I come through the next floor bead, which is this bead here. And again, because I have my mantra laid out, I'm going to pick up 2. And I'm going to go through the side bead and the floor beads. I'm going to be going through 2 beads here. So 1 and 2. And I'm going to pull this through. Go through the next floor bead, which is this bead here. And again, I had 3, 2, 2. So I'm going to go through the side bead and the floor bead. And then our mantra, 3, 2, 2, 1. I have 1 bead left. So I'm coming out here. So remember to make the little final wall. Normally I would go through just the floor bead. But I've got to go up through the side bead so that I can get into position to add that single bead. So I pick that bead up. I come through the side bead on the opposite wall. And again, if you can do it in 1 stitch, I go through the side and the floor bead. So that is taken care of. So now if I look here, I have another topper finished. So I come up through the bead right above where my thread's coming out. And then I would get into position again and go through all 4 of these beads one more time. So this will show you too, if you make the mistake and you go the opposite way, when it comes to this point, you can always come back and go another way when you get back here to the top to help you. So far, I have 1 CRAW box, 2 CRAW boxes, and 3 CRAW boxes. So I have 3. 1, 2, 3. And if you'll remember from our diagram over here, we need 14 CRAW boxes with our 11 O's. So I'm going to continue to build onto this little strip of CRAW until I have 14 boxes. If you're not sure of how many boxes you have, it's really easy to count those by just counting the beads here on the top or the bottom of your little boxes. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. So 14 boxes. Now I'm going to pull our diagram back out because we have our 14 boxes just like it shows. But now you'll notice that this is where we have a different color here. We need to actually put our smaller beads here at the curve, so that way it gives us a nice curve. So I'm going to box out those for you. Let's see, let me grab a highlighter here really quickly so maybe you'll see it a little bit better. So when I box these out, I'm going to have 1 box, 2 boxes, 3 boxes, 4, 5, and 6. So I'm going to have, again, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 boxes here. And if I count here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I've got my 6 boxes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, that are going to have 15s or your smaller bead here to the inside. So to do that is really easy. I'm just going to pick my smaller bead. So for my bigger bead, I think I forgot to tell you the colors I was doing today. I've got the Perma Finish Matte Galvanized Peach Coral in the Toho. So for the 8s, I'm going to use a Milky Pink Yarrow. Now this is one of my favorite pinks for the breast cancer awareness color, but it bums me out at the same time because Starman doesn't make this color anymore, which bums me out. So I'm going to pick a side. Does not matter which side, but one side is only going to have size 8 seed beads, okay? So whatever side I pick for the next 6 boxes, I have to put the size beads, my smaller size bead, on that side for all 6 boxes. So I'm going to start out, I'm going to put the 6s here on this side over here, or sorry, the 8s. So I'm going to pick up my 3 6s and I'm going to come back through this bead again to make my first wall. Now, when I make the second wall, I get into position, but this time I have to remember that on this front side, I need a smaller bead. So I have to pick up an 8 and a 6. So this is where it changes, an 8 and a 6. And I'm going to come back around to make a circle. Now I'm going to go through the next bead here on my floor, just like I normally would. And again, remember that this whole side has to be my size 8 seed beads. So this stitch is going to consist of 2 beads with my size 8s. So I come back around like I normally would through the side bead and the base bead or the floor bead. So that now I have the 3 beads here on this side that are using the size 8s. Now, you'll notice that these beads are smaller, of course, and this smaller part is what's going to give us that nice arch at the top that we need. So I go through the last floor bead and side bead of my box. Remember, we only have 1 bead left to add. And this is going to be the size 6. So the first side was 3 of my 6s. The second side was an 8 and a 6. The third side was 2 8s. And now this fourth side is 1 6. So I'm coming out of the side bead here with my 8 or my 6. So I'm going to come across over here to where the 8 is, and I'm going to go through the side bead and the floor bead to add that last bead there for my box. Now I'm going to come up through my side bead and then through my new floor beads again. So you can see it definitely makes it look different. I'm going to walk you through again. So the first one, I'm going to pick up 3 6s. If I'm doing the 11s, this is going to be 3 11s. And I'm going to pull it through. And then I'm going to go through the next floor bead here, which is a 6. And remember, this time I'm building this front or this inside where that curve's going to be. So I have to pick up an 8 and a 6 or a 15 and an 11, whatever size you're going to do. And I'm going to come back around just like I normally would. Now you'll notice this time my next floor bead is not a 6, but rather it's my 8 that's kind of down here. So I have to go through the next floor bead, which is that 8. Again, all of my little 8s are on one side. So this stitch is 2 8s. And I come back around to make the circle. So I go through both of those 8s, the side bead and the floor bead. So 1 and 2, so that when I pull that, I have another little wall here with just my 8s. And you'll notice the 8s here are sitting above the 8s I added in the previous box. So now I go through the side floor bead and the side bead. I only need one more bead for this little box. So I pick up the 6 and I'm going to come through the 8 and the 6. So a side bead and a floor bead, just like I normally do. And then I go up through the bead right next to where my thread is coming out. And then I'm ready to start again. So remember, this is where it comes in really handy that you always start kind of on that same bead that you're comfortable with. So now, one side still has all 6s. If I flip it this way, you'll see another side now has 2 8s that are exposed. And then here and here. So again, the first wall I'm doing is 3 6s. When I go to do the next wall, it's going to have to be an 8 and a 6. And I'm going to come back through these 2 beads again. The next floor bead of my little box is an 8, so I go through the 8 here. Remember, all of our 8s have to be on this side, so I'm picking up 2 8s, and I'm going to come back around and go through the side 8 and the floor 8, so 1 and 2. And then I'm ready again for just one more bead, so I go through the floor and the side, and then I pick up a 6, and I come around through the 8, the 6, and then up through the side bead and the new floor bead. So just like I counted the boxes here, I'm going to count these dark pink beads. 1, 2, 3. So that tells me I've done 3 CRAW boxes so far using the 6s and the 8s. So let me pour me out a few more 6s here. So if I've got 3, I need 3 more. So I pick up 3 6s and come back around to make that circle. Go through the floor. Pick up an 8 and a 6. And I'm going to come back around to make the circle. I go through the next floor bead, which is going to be an 8. Or if you're doing 11s and 15s, that's going to be a 15. I'm going to pick up 2 8s and I'm going to come back around to make the circle. So I'm going to go through the 2 8s that are already in place. And then I'm going to finish out my little box here with one of my 6s. So that now I have 4 CRAW boxes using those 8s. And you can already tell how instead of staying straight like this is, it's starting to curve. And that's exactly what we want. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 boxes. So now I'm going to work on box 5. So it's 3 6s for the first wall. Then I go through the next floor bead and it's an 8 and a 6. Go through the next floor bead, which is an 8. And I'm going to do 2 8s and come back around and go through the 2 8s. And then my last bead here for this one is my 6. So I come around and I finish out my box so that now I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 using my smaller beads. So according to my diagram, I now have 1 more box to add just like that. And as you look right now, your beads kind of look like a hot mess. They don't look that pretty the way that they are. But don't worry, because we're going to go back through these, putting a little bead in between them. Like this one is here, so that you don't see any of your threads like we see here on the outside. CRAW is a stitch where you definitely see your threads, so it's really good to use a color thread that looks good with the color beads that you're using. I seen somebody posted on the Seed Beads and More Facebook group the other day that they have been really practicing their CRAW, but they were seeing a lot of thread. And that is completely normal when you're doing CRAW, especially different shapes of beads and sizes of beads will show more thread. So don't fret, because we're going to fix it. So now that I have added my last box, and again, I'm just going to count these little side beads. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And that tells me I have my 6 boxes just like I needed here to do the curve. Okay, so it doesn't matter if I did which side I did. I just have to make sure, again, that they're all on the same side. And again, you want to use colors that match so that your whole ribbon will match really well. I'm using this different color, so it's a lot easier for you to see in the video. So now we're going to come around to this side here. Now this box, we're not going to do anything with yet. This box is going to be our connection box to here. So when we go up here, we now have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If I count these outer beads, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I have to make 5 boxes now that are just like all of these boxes here. So either using all size 6 seed beads or whatever you're using, that's what I'm going to go to now. So I'm going to make 5 more boxes that are going to look just like these. Now that I have my 5 boxes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I'm laying it in the shape of the ribbon. So I want to kind of lay it in that nice curved shape. Now you'll notice here we left this 1 box because this 1 box is going to be the connection box between the strip we just finished and our 8th box here. Now the 8th box, I'm actually going to mark it with a Sharpie. You do not want to do that, but I want to mark it with a Sharpie so you can see it good in the video. So box 8 is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So it is this box here. This is where I'm going to do the connection, is on this box. Now, when I taught my bead retreats this summer, this was honestly one of the hardest things that people had a difficult time with, was connecting our boxes together to make a shape or whatever we're going to do. You always have to think of this as one side of the box at a time. Don't try to think of 4 sides like we've got here. What I like to do is I like to start on the top side of the boxes first. So I'm actually coming out of a side bead here. So I'm just going to come up and I'm going to come through one more bead. And before I do a connection, I want to make sure that the whole thing is flat and laid out like it should be. All right. So I'm actually going to kind of have to curve this in place a little bit like this. But this is where we're going to start the connection. So for the first box, or our top of our box, you remember every box consists of 4 beads. So far, I have 1 here and 1 here. So I need 2 more beads. But if I put the 2 on this one side, I'm not going to have 1 for this side. So I have to pick up 1 bead. And I'm going to go through my 8th box in this direction. Now, once I pull this all the way through, this is what my piece is going to look like. Now, I'm going to pick up 1 more bead here, 1 more size 6 seed bead. And I'm going to come around. See, I've got half of my circle here. So I'm making a circle. So I'm going to come around and I'm going to come through this bead with that 1. So that way it makes a circle of 4 beads here along the top. So when I pull this and I pull it through, you'll now see that I have the top connected. So that is one side done and I don't have to worry about it. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to come through these 4 beads so I can come out here on this bottom side and do this side. So I'm just going to go through the 1 bead I added, my bead from box 8, the second bead that I added, and then this is where I'm going to turn my piece like this and I'm going to look down on the boxes. So you can see here, I have 1, 2, 3 beads in place. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to come through this little side bead here. And then I'm going to pick up 1 bead. Whoops. Because that's all I need to finish. 1 bead, and I'm going to come up through the side bead here from box 8. And this will finish out this one side. Because again, I already had 1 bead, 1 bead, and 1 bead. So now I'm going to add 1 bead and come through the side bead. Now once I get that side bead in, I have another box. So I'm going to come through the beads of the box. And see, I'm keeping my thumb over it so I can't even see it yet. But now you'll look and you can see that I have another side of the box. And my thread's getting short here. If you started out with 2 yards using size 11s, you won't have an issue of running out of thread. But I started out with that with my 6s and running out. But you'll see here now that I've come to this side. I have 1, 2, 3 beads in place. So I need to pick up 1 bead. And I'm going to come up through this side bead of this box so that it finishes out this side. Remember, I'm only going to work with one side at a time. It makes it less stressful. Now, once I've got it pulled through, then I'm going to come through the 4 beads of the box here. And you'll notice we've done 3 sides already. So we only have 1 more side to complete. And the great thing about that one side is if I look in the middle here, and it's kind of hard to see, but if I look in the middle, I already have those 4 beads in place. So all I need to do is go through these 4 beads to hold them into their shape. So I'm going to go through those 4 beads. So 1, 2, 3, and 4. So that now they're all connected and looking good as well. So I have part of my little piece here, and I still have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 little boxes here. And I need to make 7 more boxes to finish out the ribbon. So I'm going to stitch through the beads of this 8th box. As I count up, this is my 8th box. So I'm just going to come through the beads here to get into position to start my next set of boxes. So just like I said a second ago, I already have now this part complete. So this finished out that box there. So now I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 boxes that I am now going to make off of that one box so that it completes the ribbon. 7 other boxes complete. The shape of your ribbon is finished. But if you want to make it nice and stiff like this one is, we've got to go in and put some beads in between what we have so that way it'll stiffen it up. Now, if you're using 15s and 11s, and don't pay attention really to the counts on these because these were some testers that I was playing with and samples, you could actually leave it the way it is if you did not want to put the beads in between. Now, I personally like it a little bit better doing the beads in between, but it's completely up to you. So if you just wanted to be done, you could absolutely be done. You'll see that without putting the beads around, it actually makes it a little bit shorter. Although they have pretty much the same counts, pulling these beads are going to pull it in a little bit and make it a little bit more finished look. So it's completely up to you. But this is where you're going to need the other diagram that is in the pattern packet. And it's this diagram here with the yellow and the pink again. And you will notice that with this diagram, and I'm going to write it here again so that you'll remember, the pink is the 11-0 and the yellow would be the 15-0. Or in my case, the pink beads are the 6-0 and the yellow beads are the 8-0. So the pink beads are exactly the same, but you'll notice now we have yellow beads in between each of the beads here. So that means the yellow bead, which is going to be your 15 or your 8 or whatever size, your smaller bead, is going to go in between. Now, here's what I want you to notice. Between every bead, there is only one of your smaller beads until you get up here to the top. Okay? And if you'll notice here, we've got our 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 boxes with our 15s or our 8s or whatever. Those boxes here along the top are going to be the boxes that are going to get 2 of the smaller beads in between our bigger beads. And this is because we need it to curve nicely. And right now, these beads here are pretty far apart. So instead of being closer together, they have to have more beads so that it will fill up that gap here. So to do this, I'm going to pick somewhere down here at the bottom where my thread is coming out. Okay, so it's coming out here. So I'm just going to start and I'm going to work up on this side. So to do this, again, super easy. I'm just going to pick up a smaller bead and I'm going to go straight through the bigger bead down the line. Now, the way that your little ribbon will curve is dependent upon how tight you pull this thread. If you pull this thread super tight, it's going to really make your ribbons curve and not stay straight like they are now. You may want to play with this a little bit, play with your tension, because when I've used the smaller beads, sometimes it really curves on one side. So you kind of have to use the same tension, but you'll notice here, all I'm doing, if I pull it tight, it makes that curve. And that's kind of what I want. So I'm just going to keep on. So when I get here to the middle, I'm just going to keep going straight through to add my beads. But now you'll notice I started here on the end, on the outside, and now I'm coming to the inside. I'm just following that line of beads here. That's completely fine, because on the inside here, all of these are only getting one bead in between them. So you'll see I'm just continuing on. And so I'm just going to keep following along, adding my beads in between until I've gone all the way around and I'm down here at the bottom. So you'll notice I've gone all the way around and I've got this tight little swing here and then kind of more straight here. So if you want to, you can loosen up your tension just a little bit, but I really actually like it kind of pulled tight like that with one a little bit more straighter, because it kind of looks like that Susan G. Komen ribbon. So it's up to you. This is a part that you really can play and have a good time with. So I'm here to the bottom, so I'm just going to follow along. And I'm going to come around to this side, and now I'm just, again, going to follow the stitches and the lines to do this. And I'm going to do this, again, all the way around, following this line. So it's going to bring me to the inside again, and then back to this side. So I worked around the edge, and I continued on until I've come up to a point where I'm ready to do the top. Now, although every sample that I have done just about has worked out this way, where I'm going to need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 sets of these 2 beads here, if you get to a spot on the curve and you feel like, hey, 2 beads will fit in here, 1 bead is not going to be enough, then definitely go ahead and put in 2 of those beads. Now, if you put in 2 beads and they kind of stick out, then you know that's not the case. But look, those 2 beads right there set in perfectly in that bigger spot. So you'll kind of have to use your own, I guess, intuition on the curve of the top here. Normally it takes about 6 little sets, but you might have to put 7, or who knows, maybe even 8. So far I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and I think those 6 are going to work out exactly like I need it to. I don't think I'm going to need another set, because you'll see that that's starting to kind of poke out. That lets me kind of know that that's, you know, it's almost too snug of a space. So I'm going to go back down to my one little bead here, and I can already tell a huge difference in the stiffness of my piece as I am putting in these beads. You're going to see a huge difference. So I'm going to continue around. Remember that whatever I do on the one side, I need to make sure I do those same counts here on this side as I get around to doing that side. So I'm just going to continue to go around and add my beads in, and then I'll be back as soon as I get all of them complete. Now that I've got both sides done, I have a really nice stiff piece of beadwork that looks so cute, and I just love how it turned out. So I'm going to go ahead now, and instead of really tying this off, I'm just going to go back through the beads and reinforce this really well. Anywhere that you put a knot in it, you're going to see it. So I just stitched through several beads in different directions to get rid of the thread. And that's what you'll want to do as well. Now, if your still feels pretty floppy, Then I would probably take and go back through as much as the piece as I can with my leftover thread, so that way it really stiffens the piece up. You could also dip it in a floor wax. I know Pledge has a floor wax that dries completely clear. It doesn't yellow or anything like that. You could always dip it in something like that, but I found I'm a really tight stitcher, and normally I don't need any kind of, I guess, help with projects that are flimsy, which it should not. By the time you get these steps in, it should not be flimsy. You should have a nice stiff piece of beadwork. So once I've gone through several directions and several different ways, then I'll go ahead and trim this thread off, so that way the ribbon itself is complete and it will look just like that. Now, I did want to show you, before I signed off for today, how to start it with the CRAW tool. Now, my CRAW tool was a little bit different than what I sell now, because this was the original concept I made for the CRAW tool. But the new CRAW tools have one hole and it goes straight through, so it no longer has the 4 holes. That just seemed to confuse everybody. So I wanted to show you how to start your piece actually on the CRAW tool if you need assistance with that. So the CRAW tools come with a size 8 seed bead here along the top. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take one bead and I'm going to go back through that bead again so that it kind of makes that my stop bead. And I'm going to take the needle and go through either this side hole or this side hole. It doesn't matter which. I'm just going to take and put it through a hole. And then I'm going to hold the little tail thread around the base of the tool itself. And then I'm going to take my needle. My thread is coming out of the hole here. So I'm going to come right up through the size 8 seed bead right above where my thread is coming out at. Now remember, go in the direction, either you're going to work clockwise or you're going to work counterclockwise. All right, always work in that direction that you're used to. So the great thing about this is I already have my 4 floor beads, so I don't have to try to hold something really tiny. I've got a whole little piece of wood that I can hold here. So I started out the same way. I pick up 3 beads and I come back through the bead to make the circle. Okay. And then I go through the next floor bead just like I've been doing the whole time. And I pick up 2 beads. So I go through the wall bead and the floor bead here on my tool. I go through the next floor bead, pick up 2 beads and come back around to make that circle. So I go through a wall and a floor. Okay, and let me see here. I think I got my thread twisted. Let me get that out. There we go. Okay, and then I go through the last floor bead and the wall bead so that way I can add my one last bead here. And then I come around just like I've been doing the entire time. Okay. So this just makes starting your piece much easier because you've got something to hold on to and you're not trying to hold on to those little tiny seed beads. Now I'm going to work a couple of more of my little CRAW boxes here so I can show you how to take this off. I've already done a video on this before, and if I have the CRAW tools for sale on my website. The CRAW tool comes with the instructions on how to use the tool. It comes with the instructions on how to do basic CRAW, which I showed you in today's video, and let's see, is that it? Yeah, I don't remember. I think there's 3 things in 3 little different instruction packets in with the tool. I don't remember, to be honest with you. Maybe there's 2. My brain's not working today. But you can see I'm just working off of that one that I got started here because once I do it, I'm going to lose the first box. So I'm going to go ahead and show you here. We had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We had 7 boxes. So, and we had 14 total. So we started here and we worked 14 total. So if I was to do this piece on the tool, I would need to make 15 boxes because we're going to lose this very first box that I made. So I'm going to go and I'm going to do a few more of these, and then I'm going to come back and show you how to take it off the tool. All right, so I have a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 little CRAW boxes here. And again, the tool is great because this gives you something to hold on to start it until you've got some that you've got worked on. So to take it off the tool, I'm going to grab a hold of that stop bead and I'm going to pull that stop bead off. And then I'm going to come to the back hole and I'm going to grab the thread out of the hole. Now I'm going to take and I'm going to do this. And you see how it's loosening that whole first box up, like everything is loosening there. That's what we want. So I'm going to start right here where my tail thread's at, that short thread, and I'm just going to start picking out that thread until the whole thing pulls right out. So I have my tool ready to go again for my next CRAW project, and I now have 1, 2, 3, 4 boxes. So you can see that we lost 1 box, but now I have something that I can hold on to continue to work on my ribbon. So guys, I hope you enjoyed learning how to make this fun new awareness ribbon. Again, it's a little difficult if you're not used to CRAW, but otherwise there's just a few simple steps to making this into a beautiful ribbon that you can make into earrings, which would be awesome. You can make it into a little pendant, a pin, a zipper pull, whatever you want to do. The skies are the limit and you are the creator of what you want it to be. Now, 2 things. Number 1, I do have beads for sale on my website, as well as the free pattern. I'm going to give this pattern away for free because I know Gloria would want me to do it that way. She would want anybody who wants to make one to be able to. So the pattern is for sale, not for sale, for free on my website, but you still have to go through the checkout process to purchase the free pattern to actually be able to get it. So if you go under step-by-step tutorials, there is a whole section of freebies, so make sure to look at all the fun patterns I have for free along with the ribbon pattern. Okay, I also have the CRAW tool for sale. It's on the main page of the website, so you can't miss it. I promise you, if you have a difficult time with CRAW, you will love the CRAW tool. It will make your life so much easier when learning how to do it. And also, I know somebody's going to ask, the little earrings that I have on are earrings that I have the pattern for sale on my website. So guys, I hope you have a great day, a great rest of your week. I hope that you make some of these awesome little ribbons and that you send me pictures or you post them on our social media so that we can see those. So guys, you have a great one and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.